Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to all of you and our panel, Technology as a Driver of Personalized Travel. My name is Mariana Evanstein. It's really good to be here on the blue stage with all of you. It's been another very busy day at the ITB. It's late in the afternoon. I know everybody has had a lot of input, which is why we saved this topic for this hour for all of you right now, because it is possibly the most exciting topic in the travel industry at the moment, the role of technological innovation, how more and more tourists are requesting more personalized experiences. And of course, technology is the key to being able to deliver on this. But how? And of course, the big question is, how is this going to work when it comes to mass market travel? Because that presents some very specific challenges. We're going to unpack all of that with you today with a fantastic panel of leading experts from travel and tech companies. And to set the stage for us, before we dive into our conversation, we're going to have a quick keynote from another fantastic expert. He is the head of global solution engineering at Sabre, a company I know everybody is very familiar with. Let's have a very warm welcome for Madhavan Kasturi. Madhavan, welcome.
I couldn't agree more with Mariana. This is a very exciting topic. More exciting than American politics, I would venture to say. So what we wanted to do today was have this panel. We have a distinguished panel, and I don't want to take a lot of time here in the keynote, and I want to get you all quickly to the panel. But what I wanted to do real quick was set the scene and frame the conversation that we're going to have. And there are four fundamental themes. Personalization, of course, as Mariana introduced, that is the core central theme. So let us kick off with personalization. So when we think about personalization, at least from our perspective, one way to define personalization is being able to take the best offer at the right time in the best place for the consumer. That is one way to define personalization. But there's also a huge topic of debate. What is the cost of personalization? How far do you want to push it? What is the right balance of personalization? We all know that if a salesperson gets too close, and if they know too much about you, that is not going to be a good selling experience. At the same time, travel is a very complex product. It is not just about buying offers and buying travel products. The travel product, as we all know and experience, is a long-lived product. You go through the consumption of that product over a period of time. And there are plenty of opportunities to actually personalize the service of the product as well, not just the sell and the distribution of the product. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to address personalization? How does technology come into play? That is one of the key cornerstones of this discussion we are going to have. Following this, I want to introduce two facts. These are not topics of debate. These are just things happening in the industry. And the first of the two is fragmentation. And what we mean by fragmentation here is air content fragmentation. Of course, the travel landscape has a lot of different types of content, air, hotel, rail, car. But here, we are specifically focusing on the fragmentation within air content. And the way we see it, there are two forces that are driving it. One is the emergence of low-cost carriers. So low-cost carriers, they were born about a decade or so ago. When low-cost carriers were born, they did not think of the indirect channel. Low-cost carriers were born to go direct to the customer. And the low-cost product historically was a point-to-point domestic product. What we are seeing over the last decade is low-cost carriers are growing in a rapid way. The CAGR is something like 25% year on year. And low-cost carriers are going out of domestic point-to-point routes. They do mid-haul, and in some extreme cases, they do long-haul. Now, as a travel agency, as a seller of the travel product, you want access to all possible product out there. You cannot be restricted to full-service carrier content. LCC content is important because your travelers ask for it. But if you want to get access to LCC content, that access is fragmented. there is no standard in the LCC world. Different carriers have their own proprietary APIs. If you want to get their content, you go to those proprietary APIs. In many cases, that's the only way to get that content in a legitimate way. And that creates fragmentation. Imagine there are 200 low-cost carriers, roughly speaking. And if you had to connect to each one of those carriers on proprietary APIs, that's a huge fragmentation challenge. Flip to the full-service carriers. Full-service carriers are embracing NDC. NDC continues to evolve. It's a great effort that IATA has made to create the standard. We think it is a very, very relevant exercise to do to have a standard, but the standard is still evolving. There are multiple versions of NDC, and if you look at different carrier implementations of NDC, the implementations tend to vary because NDC as a standard is not a tight standard. It's more of a guiding principle, and it's a prescribed standard, and there is room to interpret. So implementations vary, and that means even on the NDC content, where full-service carrier content is flowing through the NDC pipe, so to speak, the pipes tend to be fragmented. Different API implementations, different levels of implementations. So this is the fragmentation challenge. Just wanted to set the scene by what we mean about fragmentation. But what does fragmentation lead to? The most obvious problem with fragmentation is connectivity, right? It doesn't make sense for thousands of travel agents to be connecting to hundreds or very soon even 1,000 different airlines through all these different pipes. That is like multiplying the complexity M times N, where M is the number of agencies, N is the number of suppliers. It doesn't make sense to do it. There is an easier path to do it by simplifying the whole landscape. So that is an area where we are going to focus on. And the last theme, which hopefully is the silver bullet and the solution to all this, is artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence is a broad topic. I don't think a day goes by for any of you in this room where you don't hear about how cool AI is, how is AI impacting you day to day. What we want to do in this session is kind of focus the conversation a little bit. Think of AI as two types of AI in simple terms. There is generative AI, where you generate content using AI technologies. And then there is a traditional AI, which you could argue as an extension of advanced, clever programming. Okay? So there are these two types of AI. And what we want to do is, using these two concepts of AI, have a conversation about how do we solve the challenge of connectivity created by fragmentation, while at the same time giving the customer, the traveler, that great personalized experience that they crave for. So with that, I would like to invite the panel onto the stage.
Thank you very much. Don't run away. Madhavan, you are a part of our panel, so if you don't mind, be so kind, you can join us all the way on the other side, if you don't mind. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's almost like being in school, so we get to position all of the... No, Madhavan, we want you on the stage. Please, have a seat. Don't think you're off the hook that quickly. Don't be shy. No. So now, let's start again. So let's have a quick round of applause for Madhavan's presentation. Here we go. So, and now I get to bring in our other esteemed panelists onto the stage, beginning with Andy Washington, who is the General Manager Europe at Trip.com. Andy, hello. So next up, we have Robin Lother. He is Vice President at Expedia TAP. Hello to you, Robin. We're also joined by Henry Lange. He is Vice President Digital Retailing at Lufthansa Group Airlines. And last but not least, I'm very, very pleased to welcome João Gonzaga. He's the Chief Digital Officer at Der Tour Group. Hey, João. Welcome, gentlemen. You get to sit next to me.
Thank you so much.
So, yes, AI. We just heard is the holy grail. It's the answer to all of our problems. It's the key to scaling, personalization, and travel. But it's maybe not that simple. I would want to know, especially in things like mass travel or group bookings. So, Joao, maybe we can start with you. How can companies implement personalization in a way that's still actually profitable when it comes to mass-produced or packaged travel offerings? So it's different if it's one person, but what about these mass travel bookings?
Yeah, I think from their tool perspective as a tour operator, of course, we have all kind of products. You know, we have hotels, we have experience, we have airlines. And we have to see our customers looking for a combined solution, not just single one. And the fragmentation that Madhavan mentioned before is one of the major problems, because we're talking about fragmentation of the suppliers, we're talking about fragmentation of the systems that we use. So from our perspective, when we create a package, and now looking into AI, how can we create dynamic recommendation using AI? How can we go into personalization using AI by better understanding what our customers want and give them, let's say, a more suitable product from their own use? I believe that when you look to the different scenarios that we are targeting to have, you know, during the entire customer journey, from inspiration to booking to in travel or in destination after travel, this is the area where, you know, data is quite relevant, better understanding the customer by itself, and using AI, you know, is not only kind of, you know, the server bullet, but is using AI to better understanding their own needs, and then provide the better recommendation to these different touch points that I mentioned before.
Right, so you mentioned the fragmented content. There's so many different platforms, there's so many different providers, so many different touch points, you know, just as a consumer, all these different companies to deal with. So how can we simplify the customer journey? I'll open that to any of you.
I mean, happy to start and offer a few perspectives on that. Coming from the Expedia background, I mean, I think this is what we've been trying to do for many years. We are an OTA, and our purpose is to bring together that vast array of fragmented content that is out there. And also, if I put my own hat on and the travel agency business that we support, this is what we empower travel agents to do. Travel agents are the experts at navigating that vastly complicated web and ecosystem that exists around fragmentation. Now, the question is, where do we go from here? And to that point on AI and personalization, this feels like the perfect time to really help a much broader number of consumers with this piece, rather than something that was a bit more, perhaps, generic in the past. And to that, I mean, a customer wants to go on a 2-week trip to Thailand. Regardless of budget, we can help customize and personalize that through to a customer that wants to go on a 3-week safari across Africa. With the power of AI, you're not just reliant on humans to craft these experiences, but you can actually leverage an enormous amount of data to create highly relevant and targeted trips for a much greater number of consumers than existed in the past. Of course, you've got to stitch together all of the pieces of the journey to then make that possible. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of the challenges of that as we go through.
Well, speaking about personalization, I'd be curious to get the take from Trip.com, which is, of course, a company based in China. And China, as a country, is showing increasing leadership in AI. So, Andy, how does Trip.com see the potential of AI for creating these types of personalized travel experiences?
I think the word there, potential, is hugely important. It's how we embrace it and how we use it. If I was to ask all of you in the audience now, if you were to start the travel industry today, would you design it as it is right now? Hands up, anyone that would? No. We'd all start very, very different. And I put it into that context of, if you look back, there was tour operators, and they have this model of, this is what we've got, please book it. Then there's the traditional OTA model of, let's fill the shelves with everything and see if you can find it. What AI does now is gives people the ability to personalize it, and we find it for you. We've got all the supply you need in the warehouse, but with our front end and the AI and the data and the understanding and the personalization, we'll be able to bring it to you. It's not about forcing it on the customer, it's about understanding their needs and their wants, but it takes it to that words you just said, travel agent. This is the first time our industry has got the opportunity to utilize AI to turn online into a travel agent. And I'm talking the old high street travel agent who can sit with you, understand your needs and personalization. That's what AI is going to allow us to do. So we lean very heavily into that. I listened to your points there regarding how AI works. Yes, it can be front end. It can also be back end, customer service. It's about that content element. We very much use it in our customer service as well. It's not there to replace people, but our Trustpilot rating is now at 4.4, which I think is pretty excellent across the industry. It's because AI now empowers our customer service team with more information that they could ever learn. So again, they become a better travel agent. Our site becomes a better travel agent.
Anybody want to add something?
Maybe the bit to add to that. One, I think, and a lot of the focus has been on the front end piece. So how do customers buy? How do we help them avail of more targeted offers? How do we make that more seamless? I think the other bit, and this is, I'm sure we'll debate, there's still a long way to go on the fulfillment side of things. And I was thinking of my journey here last night. I came from Amsterdam. It was a very simple journey. There were 6 different travel apps that I had to integrate or interact with in order to get here. And so I think there's still a long ways to go on that back end piece of how do we actually bring this together into, once a customer's purchased, how do we actually take them on that journey from when they leave home to they return home? And I think a vast array of elements that still need to be stitched together across that journey. I'm a firm believer AI can help on the purchase piece, it can help on the service piece. There's still a lot to be figured out on how we stitch that whole journey together end to end for the customer.
And the view from Lufthansa?
Yeah, I think I would echo a lot what the colleagues are saying. I think for us, probably as a travel supplier, it's also, I always have a little bit the 2 hats on because we do a lot of the stuff ourselves while we also work very intensively with the organizations of all of the gentlemen here on stage. So for me, it's also always the question, right? How do we make sure as an airline, also with a strong brand also, and that's where technology comes in, that the experiences that we craft ourselves, so on our own.com, right, we basically probably work on pretty similar stuff in terms of how do we get customers on, identify them, serve them with an individual flow, recommend products that we feel are relevant for them, and then also in the service delivery, ideally make sure that maybe even the crew on board knows something about the customer, etc. So if you do this personalization in the space that you control, it really comes down then to strong partnerships and obviously a lot of technology to make sure that you somehow also in an indirect space these developments kind of take place, right? So that's where indeed AI comes in both as a driver, but also obviously some tech partners come in as simply a partner to help you do that. So I think that's maybe the steady piece I feel in the discussion is that all of that relies on strong partnerships to kind of solve for a better customer experience, right? And finding kind of those elements of complementary value between partners to say, okay, these are the things that really help a customer in the end, also not to complicate things, but really bring this relevance that we all want to see from AI-driven personalization.
I see Madhavan nodding.
Yes.
Did you want to say something? I'm just curious how you see AI transforming the way we not just, we plan our travel, we organize it as individuals, but also as groups.
Sure. I want to pick on a point that Robin made, which is the stitching things together in the back end. It's absolutely critical. We very strongly believe that. On the front end, you are going to have a lot of touch points. No escaping that. Anyone who wants to set up a shop and sell travel, they're going to do it, right? Because they think they're going to do it right. What's important is to bring it all together in the back end, especially with fragmentation and all these different sources of content. So the way we are thinking about it in Sabre is we have to reinvent what was traditionally known as the GDS. So the ATP world of the GDSs creating offers is long gone. And it is about aggregation of content from these different sources. And then on top of that aggregation, the stitching together, the way we see it, is about normalizing that content across these different data sources, right? And normalization is not a simple problem to solve. You cannot take all these different sources of content and put it in a common data structure. That doesn't work. It's not that simple. And here is where AI comes into play. The normalization has to be dynamic. The way you normalize and cater to how an offer should perform, how fast it should be, how accurate it should be, and how do you represent, to Henry's point, how do you represent the product maker's brand in a consistent way on the indirect channel? Solving for that is going to happen through AI, and normalization plays a key part in that.
I think the important part that comes into all of that, though, is the customer. Because again, historically, you look at OTAs, it's built on tabs, which were only designed that way because of technology feeds. So we didn't build it around the customer. what you're talking about there and that normalization is to then have that appetite so that if you do have transparent partnerships and people work together on AI and that content, ironically, the airline industry is probably a lot easier than maybe hotel side of things because it's more coded around, there's a different code for every seat, a different code for every ticket. Whereas hotels, everyone calls a room something completely different. That gives the whole industry that opportunity to then solve for the customer. But that's the big thing that's going to happen this year, as long as the partnerships are very valuable and work together and are transparent in that data. That's then us thinking about the customer rather than it's just technology driving it.
Yeah.
And maybe just add to that, I think the point on the customer is the most critical one, but I think this is also where there is a conflict that exists because everybody wants to drive to unique and personalized experiences, and Madhavan mentioned a bit around standards at the start. When you have a world where people understandably want to optimize for the direct channel, there's things that they're going to want to build out in their ecosystem, and then you've got to try and how do you pull that together in the indirect channel, because realistically, customers are going to shop across a plethora of platforms. And I think that's kind of the real inherent challenge that we need to solve for. If we said, and we honestly wanted just to solve for the customer and do the best thing for a customer, we'd need to define common standards that everybody across all parts of the ecosystem agrees to adhere to. The reality is, of course, not that. We want to help the customer, but everybody here is representing different businesses, and different businesses want to optimize for different things. And so it's how do we actually pull that together and kind of solve for some of those conflicts that exist and the challenges in pulling everything together.
And maybe just to add, because it was mentioned before, but I think it fits very well, we always, for travel, always need to think of, it's not just the buying transaction that counts for this challenge, right? So I think what we're talking a lot about in the industry is, omni-channel, all those buzzwords, but it is true, right, that we need to make sure that also when, for example, a customer of ours buys with Robin, maybe at some point in time they come into our ecosystem, right? They check in, etc. And ideally, a customer there would maybe expect us to take care of them in case of Iraq, right? And it's just a very simple example, but I think that's just also the fundamental difference talking about travel as a whole experience versus, we often tend to compare ourselves with our ambitions to regular physical retail, right? But there you don't have the complexity so much or the variations of experiences that customers take through our different ecosystems. So this end-to-end experience, I think, is super important because as Madhavan said, right, sometimes when you talk about personalization, a lot of people think about price and unbundling, right? So really this offer piece, because I think that's kind of where the personalization story started. But I think in the meantime, it's much more extending also into different fields in all of the phases of the customer journey.
Yeah, if I can add, I think we mentioned before the different channels. For the customer, from a customer perspective, they don't see the technology. In the end of the day, when we talk about, the person going online and having experience or going to the travel agency, what we have to consider from our perspective, from omni-channel, we have an omni-channel inconsistency because the customers, when they leave the online world and they go to the real world, sometimes there's no connection there, so between the offline and online. And I believe that we have capabilities today, so not only AI. I would assume most of us are using platforms like CDP to kind of stitch together the customer and have a unique view of the customer, so that the customer, when going from one channel to the other, we're still recognizing it's the same customers. Of course, using AI will accelerate this process, in the customer experience, because at the end of the day, whatever we do in technology, hopefully is doing it on behalf of a better customer experience end-to-end, independent from the vendors, independent from the channels where they go. And I believe here we still have a long way to go. The topic collaboration between different vendors, because the customers, as you said, we collaborate with each other, but if we solve our view of the problem, and the customer goes back to you guys as Lufthansa, they have kind of a broken experience, and this is something that we have to change in the industry.
So I have to ask you your thoughts on some research that was mentioned at another panel that I moderated earlier this afternoon, where we had presentations from Focusrite and also Euromonitor International. It really surprised me that apparently when it comes to Gen Z travelers, a third of them are looking for an in-person booking experience, which completely surprised me because my son is Gen Z and all I see him is with his phone and using apps, and I can't imagine. But apparently there are some, maybe they're the older Gen Z, because Gen Z is between the ages of 16 and 30. Right, so that demographic, they're the ones who are increasingly having more and more purchasing power. They're absolutely a very important target group as they want to use their hard-earned money before they have kids whose college educations they're saving for. They're going to be using their money to travel. And I just was wondering whether it's some sort of a backlash to this automation and the technological advances that somehow people still want a human touch in travel service. So how do we balance that? You know, with this impressive technology and AI, but there's always this risk of losing the human aspect of customer service. I mean, how tired am I sometimes if I'm just like clicking endlessly and I just want to talk to somebody?
That's because you've been dealt with by chatbots and not AI. Chatbots are the bane of everyone's life and a complete waste of time. FAQs are a waste of time unless you just post them on your site for FAQs, not as an interactive chat. AI allows us to actually serve the customer with real-time chat or real-time text to give them the answers that they need and they want that they couldn't find from an FAQ and what we can't always find in chatbots. So I think there's that frustration. I've got a market research group of 3, which are my children. They do all their homework now on an app. None of them do it on a laptop. My daughter asked me a couple of weeks ago, how do I turn the laptop on? That scares the life out of me. But actually, that will be an enhancement, and we always talk about critical points in travel, about when apps came along, now AI coming along. Actually, we're already there in terms of AI on apps, that loyalty. I would define that personalization journey that Gen Z want as, I just want you to do it for me, because there's a lazier generation, and I'll quite standardize that not just on my 3 children. They expect things to do it more for you. But actually what that app will bring is the benefit of AI and that utilization of it more. So actually they will be seeing it, they just don't know it.
Some other thoughts?
Yeah, maybe one thought that I feel remains though is, and maybe gets a little bit more nuanced, is still this creation of trust, right? I think in your example, it's you create trust simply by creating that relevance and the quality of experience, right? But at the same time, maybe you know, in terms of a purchasing behavior, especially if you talk about big money, that's maybe where I'm not saying that drives back to a human interaction, because I think it also believe it can be done, but I think we need to be aware that when we talk about relevance and personalization, there is, I think, this currency of trust that you need to create, right? Because obviously relevance and focus offers also always means, well, I might not give you the full transparency because I believe based on your profile that this is the perfect offer for you, right? And I don't know if that's the example for the study, but I think that's at least something that we need to manage very carefully on how to create that trust that it is the best offer out there, right? And it's not you're being played, but it's like it's really we're creating this win-win.
That's where AI beats a chatbot, because a chatbot is just me too, fits everyone. It's the answer that you're going to get whether you like it or not. But I'll use the data points. AI in our booking path or front end, 100% increase in usage, 200% increase in conversion. And then in our contact center, over 70% of contacts are now dealt with by AI. That might be with a human. It's not there to replace it, it's to enhance it. But that Trustpilot score has gone up since we launched AI in the call center.
I think what Andy said triggered a completely different use case in my mind. In the corporate travel world, a lot of corporate travelers still prefer to send emails instead of using their OBDs to make changes to their travel. And if you look at a corporate travel agent, the amount of time spent in going through emails and figuring out that change, sending a confirmation back, it's a horrendous waste. So we developed an AI microservice. So the right application of AI is the key, because you can process emails much more intelligently this day and age. And then with generative AI, automatically generate the most relevant options. And the human touch point is very, very simple. The agent just has to look at the AI response and just say yes or no after a sanity check. So that's another powerful use case where you can apply use case to AI to bring the human touch.
I think maybe to go back to your question on kind of Gen Z and looking for travel agents and kind of why might people still be shopping offline. I mean, this speaks to the business I run, but if I go back in time, I took my current job in September 2020, and I questioned if at the time, was I absolutely crazy to do so? We were in a world that was decimated by a virus I won't talk about, but that was forcing seemingly everything online. Suddenly everybody was using Zoom, everybody was ordering their books online, every single parcel was coming online. And a lot of people questioned, once again, were travel agents going to be irrelevant at the end of this? Fast forward to now, and this business is performing phenomenally. There is enormous demand still out there for people to speak to and interact with a real human. And so while AI is going to help an enormous number of people, and I also believe AI will help an enormous number of travel agents, I also believe there's still huge space and demand for agents. People value the trust, transparency, helping someone navigate that very complex purchase journey. And particularly once we start talking about big ticket items, and that big ticket number varies depending on who you speak to and what their budget is, but people are spending money on something that really matters to them. It's something that they go to work every day in order to fund in their spare time, and they want that to be delivered perfectly, and they want to trust that someone is going to be there to manage that end-to-end experience. And I think the thing that always strikes me when we interact with our travel agents is they care so deeply. It's not that they have 1,000 customers, and if one is upset, they sort of write it off. They have a handful of customers that trust them for making their dreams and their holidays come true. And I think we've seen that segment just be so strong and so resilient. And I actually think now more and more people recognize, well, it may not actually cost me that much more, if anything more, to work with a travel agent, but they can give me and guarantee a very seamless end-to-end experience, at least through that purchase part of the journey.
Yeah, and I think, let's say, as a tour operator, of course, we have travel agencies where, our goal is not only to empower the end users with, let's say, using AI, because in the end of the day, the travel agents is the same. We have to empower them to be able to help our end users, the same way. And what we can see, and you mentioned it right, it's not about replacing humans, it's about a coexistence between both. We see the amount of people that in the end, start, the conversation with a, let's say, chatbot, AI-powered, and in the end want to talk with a human, because at least for leisure travel is very emotional. Someone is like, I'm going to spend a certain amount of money, go with my family on vacation. Sometime you want this kind of human touch to confirm what you want. But in the end, the human touch, the travel agents from today, is not just about reading FAQ, because it's very limited. Is actually are using chatbots themselves that have access to the amount of information, and we give them superpowers. In the end of the day, superpowers to help our customers, once again in this journey, because I believe that the different questions that we have, the booking, or starting with the search will change. Search today is like, going to website and select some drop box. Why not having a dialogue? Because this is what users are looking for. And this is what, across the journey, is using technology to enable our customers in this, starting your presentation, very fragmented world, to stitch it together to give them a better experience.
You talk about all the information that we want to gather from our customers so that we're able to deliver these personalized offers. So again, what you're talking about is data, of course, which is the backbone of personalization. But we also still have data coming from so many different sources and in so many different formats. So how are your companies dealing with this challenge of trying to integrate all the data that you're collecting in different formats from different sources to gain an understanding of your customers? What are the ways in which you're trying to make this a smoother and more efficient process?
I would say, at least from our side, we are trying to combine both. In some areas we have kind of first-party data that we can use, the booking, the preferences, the search. But it's not enough. On the other hand, we have partners that we rely on, airlines, hotels. As I mentioned before, the stitching, the data, that's what brings the user, the value that they're looking for. We spoke before about personalization. So personalization should be like, add a real value to the user, not just like, give the sales funnel, let's say, more capabilities. I believe that at the end of the day, the very siloed data that we have, in order to solve it, is two parts. One is using technology. We spoke about the AI before, we spoke about the CDP, but the other part is industry collaboration, because industry collaboration is broken in some ways. And this is something that, been talking about it since years. I still believe that, we still have a couple of years in front of us, but hopefully we're gonna solve it.
So you say that the collaboration is broken or it's not working very well. So what could be done to make it work better? How do you see the future of collaboration? Because as Joao tells us, it's really what is required to be able to move forward, get the customers the personalization that they need, but also allow businesses to do it in a way that's profitable and beneficial for them.
I'll go to the previous question real quick and come to this one. So we think about it more from a technology point of view. One thing is we should get comfortable with loose standards, right? So for industry participants to collaborate, if we define standards that are too hard and have a very strong type definition, it is very hard to enforce and follow it. So I think as an industry, we need to get comfortable with loose standards, meaning a name and a variable could have multiple different ways of specifying it, and we should have systems that are flexible to accommodate that. That is very, very important. And from our perspective, that translates into having APIs that are not rigid XML format based, which is what the NDC standard is based on. We're going a level further and embracing the JSON format, which is more of a computer communication through a natural language format. So we think that is very important. Having tech that's modular is very, very important. So we certainly have changed our mind in terms of thinking about technology. We don't have to build all the pieces of the kit. Our customers are technology companies themselves, airlines and travel agencies. So figuring out the right modules and how these modules interplay is very, very important. And then in terms of collaboration, I think once you have the right platform and the foundation from a technology perspective, it's easier to collaborate and gain that trust in terms of how these modules interplay. So that's one way to think about it.
And I mean, one specific thing for the next years that I think will keep the industry quite busy is, of course, also the transformation to one order and order management, right? Because at the moment, why certain things, I don't know if that was me, why things are broken today is because I think we all, sit on the table, have great ideas, what we want to do. I think there's also a lot of, goodwill in terms of partnerships, trying to solve for customer needs. I think there's no lack of that. But we often still have to translate our ambitions back into sometimes legacy technology, right? Especially if we want to offer it, like we said before, kind of across channels, right? And then you have a disparity potentially of capabilities simply. And I guess order management will be one of the things that at least, for us on an airline side where we think, okay, we're still, we're translating back to tickets, to EMDs for ancillaries. We have bookings. It's all separated. In a case like ours, we even have different ticket stocks for the different Lufthansa Group airlines, etc. Right? So we basically we're still, yes, we digitalized it, right? But we haven't innovated it in a way that we're basically still having processes that are rooted in a way where we were writing down paper tickets and handing them over to customers. So of course, this is, I think, technology-wise, for sure, also one of the big levers that will drive some of the collaboration topics in the future.
That B2B piece will be the changer this year. And a lot of it will come down to appetites and, again, understanding that this is about the customer, not about our own individual aspirations. I think you look at the news at the moment, and perhaps there's some people that are very much on their own aspirations when it comes to big news stories. So I'll quickly say thank you for having us all on here today. But if we think of that customer, then we start to break down and then we create those partnerships, and then that will enhance the industry as a whole. Will every partner and company do that? No, they won't. But the ones that see the benefit in it and see the ability to, you spoke about 6 apps yesterday. I think, we're very much at a point where, I know from our business, I know when I land where my baggage is, or if I've been delayed, that my hotel will be aware of that, what carousel I'm going to, that my transfer has been contacted. All of that comes from that sharing of data. We're not talking customer data, we're talking that content data. And that partnership brings, if that was a flight with Lufthansa, that would bring a great kudos to them and to us because the customer benefits and want to go again.
I think, let's say, there's a great example where the partnership really, plays a role. Madhavan, you mentioned before NDC. I remember years ago, everyone's like, finally, we're going to have a standard. And suddenly we're talking about variation of NDC, which, in the end of the day, is not standardization. And, in my early days, I worked in the telecommunication industry for Vodafone. As you know, the telecom industry is very standard. I take my phone, it doesn't matter in which country I land, I switch my phone on. There's a lot of things happening in the background between my phone, my SIM card, the towers, and guess what? It works. As you might recall, in the early days, I don't know, maybe in the 2000s, if you would go to US or to China, you'd take a separate phone because the standards was not there. But in the telco industry, at that time, we managed to move from a variation of standards to a clear standards and to commitment. And the question is where is this commitment in the travel space to say, let's not create variation, and let's commit?
When we talk about technological innovation, and we just have a couple of minutes left, is it mainly AI-driven, or are there other things that we can look forward to enhancing the travel industry in the future? So are there any other types of innovations that you're looking forward to or you think are necessary, or is this everything is going to be driven by AI?
Maybe I'm happy to start on that. I think sometimes the AI piece is overplayed, and I think it was Madhavan mentioned at the start on AI being the silver bullet for everything. Anytime anybody mentions a problem now, AI is going to be the solution to it. Many of the problems we're solving in the industry are not even necessarily AI problems, but now get tagged with the AI badge. Indeed, some of the connectivity challenges we're talking about are fragmentation challenges. AI might play a role in solving them, but there's also other things that will lead to those solutions as well. So I think we've got to be somewhat careful about how we use the term AI. I think kind of listening to the last conversation, we've also got to admit this industry is very hard. It is really very hard to deliver a seamless end-to-end experience connecting the entire ecosystem together. I believe AI can definitely help on that, but there's also other challenges that we've got to work through, how we interact with others, how we kind of stitch this all together. That is not just an AI challenge that we need to solve for.
Yeah, I think, let's say, one topic that if you go back, I think 3 years from today, ITB, everyone was talking about blockchain, great technology, unfortunately not implemented maybe, or the rollout in the right way. But I still hope that when it comes to blockchain, at least when it comes to smart contracts, is something that still play a role in travel because it will simplify and standardize a lot of the processes.
I'd say sustainable fuel. There still needs to be huge advancements in that, and that's a necessity. And then app will overtake desktop. 10 years ago, the European markets were ahead of the Asian markets. That's completely flipped around now. We're way behind the Asian markets in user behavior and technologies. And I see a C-trip, over 90% of our bookings very regularly are done on app. European markets are way behind that. But you will see that, particularly with the younger generations, that's all they'll use moving forward. Which, trust me, when they then come into your business and can't use a laptop, that's the next challenge for us.
And maybe to add, I think we don't have an explicit expert for that on the stage here. But again, travel is also about the physical experience later on, right? So a lot of technology, just thinking of biometrics, etc. So a lot is happening. I mean, obviously for us as an airline, what can we do on an airport side, right? Taking out the hassle. Probably we all know that the new scanners, right, where we don't need to take out liquids, right? It's one of those moments where we felt like, oh, and this is really good, and things like that. So I think in that space, completely different topic, but I think also a lot of innovation and technology happening that overall helps the travel experience, right, to make it more seamless. I mean, obviously we're more focusing on the commercial aspects here, but I think in the end that all ties in together.
So we have about a minute and a half left, and I'm just really curious, because again, we spoke about this in the other panel that I had earlier in the day, talking about Gen B, who are being born now, and who will be AI natives. What is that going to look like when they start traveling? So any spontaneous last thoughts from anybody? AI natives traveling in 25 years? What's that going to look like?
Maybe they travel more virtually. That's the first thought that comes to mind spontaneously, right?
I'll hopefully be retired by then.
I believe that they will not be talking about AI, because right now is mixed between, a tool, a hype. They will just use it.
At the same time, I do think with the speed of developments that by that time, it will be a reality that AIs talk to each other, that we have agentic AI, which we talk about the beginning of the year, and we see some first steps. So this integration of the SIX app that Robin was struggling with, I do feel the technology will solve for some of those issues.
And I guess if you look to the past, if we were here 25 years ago, we wouldn't even be talking about apps. So fast forward 25 years, I have to hope all of the challenges we've just talked about have been solved. And hopefully we'll be here to find out.
What a great way to end this panel. So thank you very much indeed to all of my panelists. Thank you.